Hi, welcome to the Keyboard Chronicles, a podcast for keyboard players, the gigging variety. My name's David Holloway, and it's great as always to be here with you. And he's back. We've promised for weeks. Paul's back. How are you, sir?
Oh, look, can I say I'm so happy to be back. I'm sorry I've not been here, folks, and David, I've left you in the lurch, although maybe that's been a good thing, not having me around, mate. You've been able to just fly off by yourself, but I've had broken ribs, I've had technology problems, and I think the broken ribs aren't quite healed, but the technology problems are more or less healed. So I'm pleased to be back.
I didn't mention your broken ribs. I definitely mentioned you sitting at poolside bars, and then I mentioned with our last episode with Andy Alston that you were having some technical issues. So great to have you back.
Yeah, it's good to be back, David, and to all our listeners and all our viewers, I've missed you. It's great to be back.
You're only human. So, we're pleased to be back together. And our guest for this first one back together in a few episodes is Mr. Tom Schuman. So for jazz fans, you are very, very likely to be more than aware of Spyro Gyra, the great band. It's a pleasure having Tom on the show. We talked in depth with Tom about a whole bunch of stuff, Paul, didn't we?
Yeah, we certainly did. And I feel like I repeat myself, but such an interesting guy to talk to. He's had an amazing career, 49 years with Spyro Gyra. I won't give away too much, but he reveals something pretty big in relation to that during the chat. And he's a deep thinker and has got a lot of interesting things to share, things that he's learned over his career.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So hope you enjoy this one as much as we did recording it, and we'll see you at the end of the show. Tom, absolute pleasure to have you here, and thank you for giving up part of your Friday night.
Hey, it's a great pleasure, and I know it's early there, but in Australia, but this is a great opportunity for me to just talk to some people who actually know what they're talking about.
Yeah, so, thank you, Tom. I think you're very kind. You may discover during this interview in regards to jazz, we aren't quite as educated, but we definitely love it. So.
Well, we talk about keyboards, right? It's all about keyboards, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say, I think it's the first time anyone's ever told David and I that we know what we're talking about. So thank you very much for the compliment.
Well, I took the time to watch a couple of the other shows. And I want to, of course, thank Steve Nathan for setting this up and recommending me for you guys. And it's a great pleasure to be here with you.
No, great stuff. And yeah, Steve is a champion of a human being.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
I practically grew up with him in Buffalo. He was always playing in the clubs, and I actually dated. His sister was my first girlfriend.
Oh, wow!
Yeah, you do go back a ways.
Back in the early 70s, and she'd always bring me to where he's playing, and I was just amazed by his talent. And he would sing like Stevie Wonder, like it would sound just like Stevie, So it was really a great pleasure to know that family.
Well, you've given us a lovely segue, Tom, into your upbringing. So I know from your biography that you are the son of two jazz musicians yourself. So I'm assuming I don't need to ask what influence this had on your musical upbringing, but tell us about your musical upbringing anyway, so how that went for you.
Oh, it's everything. My father, Wally Schuman, anybody who's listening from Buffalo would probably know that name. He was the first pick bassist in any, I think, in mostly jazz. His upright bass playing was perfect. Everybody loved him because of his personality. I like to think that I got the best of who I am from both him and my mom and my wife. But he was one of those bass players that always knew exactly what the best bass notes to play. And everybody always told me that. I said, they would say, Wally always knows what to play. He knows how to make it feel good and how to make whatever it is that we're doing out there, whether it's right or wrong, he'll find the right bass note for it. So I think I learned from the bass up musically, and in some ways it hurt me because I never really got strong at the left-hand bass thing. That's why I love organ players who can do that. Joey DeFrancesco, I was just blown away by his capabilities. And to be able to do the one-line organ comps while you're soloing, it's a science to me. I can't split my brain that much, and if I do, it has to be a repetitive thing. So anyway, I kind of blame my father for that. But yeah, he was great to work with, and we got to do a gig together. And he was very nervous to play with me. I don't know why, but anyway, my mother was a jazz singer. When they met, he came on stage to, I guess, sit in with the band she was singing in, and that's how they met. And so I grew up listening to Oscar Peterson Trio constantly. My mother liked Sarah Vaughan and Carmen McRae, and it was just one of those upbringings where you just can't. Jazz was just something that it just became osmosis. It was something you had to do, you had to love, and you had to follow your heart on, because it's really. I mean, to this day, I'm still learning about how to best approach jazz and how to best create melodies on the fly over chord changes, and it's a science, and it's just the best joy in the world to be able to produce live music in front of an audience, and you don't necessarily know exactly how it's going to go. It's kind of like this interview.
Yeah, that's right. But and Tom, just on that, I mean, obviously you had that wonderful start. So what was the actual formal process for you getting across a piano or a keyboard and getting to a level where you go, I would like to do this for a living?
Well, my family had a piano in the house. It was a Baldwin Acrosonic Spinet, but it sounded pretty good. It was a good sounding piano, and it had a very easy action. And I had a lot of friends of the family and friends of my father who would come by and share their knowledge with me and sit me down and go, hey, check this chord out, and then other friends of his had children who also played jazz music. So we automatically had numerous bands together growing up. And we got the great pleasure and ability to actually get together and jam. A lot of players, they just practice by themselves. But I think jazz is something that you have to have a conversation with other people. And I was very fortunate to be raised in a family that had friends who were very much into the music as well. And the kids were all, prodigies, and we all got together and we were trying to emulate, the Oscar Peterson Trio and Chick Corea and Herbie Hancock and all that. And it was just a great upbringing. And I think that's very important for people out there to not just practice by yourself. Obviously, you got to get your instrument together and get to know and master your own instrument. But that conversation that you have with other musicians, that's what it's all about.
It almost sounds like, maybe a certain family would get together and all the kids would run around outside playing baseball or something like that, or maybe you guys all grabbed your instruments and played together and sort of developed that way. Not saying that you maybe didn't play baseball as well.
Oh, we played, actually we used to play touch football out in the street.
Awesome.
Where there was no grass, so you couldn't get tackled. But, as soon as you touched the guy, that was the tackle.
Gravel rash.
Yeah, we did try playing baseball until the windows started getting broken, and forget it. Go out in the street, play touch football, and then yell when there's a car.
Now you just mentioned, Tom, that you never quite know how things are going to go when you play, and so I'd love you to tell us about the first time you had a real gig as a teenager. I believe things may not have 100% gone to plan at that gig as well. Yeah, we thought we might get in early on that one. We normally ask at the end of the show, but we thought, well, let's kick off with the train wreck since it was from your formative years.
Oh my God, this was from the 1973 senior prom, and I was, I believe, a sophomore then. I don't know, maybe a freshman or a sophomore, but they had caught wind on the fact that I had this talent, and so they hired me to do background music, while they had their buffet or whatever. So I had my friend Charlie, who was one of my friends that could play great jazz. I mean, Ed Thigpen was his idol back then. And then, of course, Tony Williams and all that. But long story short, we showed up, and his brother also plays bass. So we had an instant trio that loved that music. So I show up, and there's a baby grand piano sitting there in the corner of this small stage. And I go over there, and Charlie came in, and he has like his drums. I don't know, he probably had 2 toms and a kick drum and a snare and a couple of cymbals, whatever. He says, "Oh, we're not going to be able to all fit on this stage, you know. So let's move the piano." And I went up to the piano, and he pulled and I pushed. Actually, he pushed and I pulled at the front of the keyboard. And the thing buckled and fell on top of me. Okay, I fell backwards. Oh. And I started screaming. I was like, I must have been 15, maybe 14, I don't know. And I thought I was going to die. I thought that was it. That was the end of my life. My first gig is going to kill me. But, you know, a bunch of people came, you know, and helped pull the piano back up off of me. And we got a couple of garbage cans and set the piano, you know, because those legs just broke. They just, you know. And it was a horrible sounding piano on top of that. It was very muddy. As a matter of fact, there was actual dirt in the, you know, the harp assembly. And it was horrible. It was just horrible. Nevertheless, we still managed to do the gig and get our $20 each, you know. And, you know, we thought, okay, if we can survive this, I think the rest is going to be pretty easy.
It's gravy from there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm assuming you've had nothing to match that since, Tom. I don't think
I got something else. I got something else.
Yeah, go for it.
You know, there's a place in Long Island called IMAC, which was a performance place. It was like a little off-Broadway stage with a small audience, maybe 200 people. And Spyro Gyra was playing there. I forget what year it was. It was probably in the late 80s. And I had this A-frame setup, an A-frame keyboard rack. And on the first rung of the A-frame was a Roland RD-1000, okay? And on top of the RD-1000, because it had a flat top, I put a Yamaha DX7, okay? So between the RD-1000 and the DX7, you probably got 150 pounds there. On top of that, I had on another tier, the Roland D50, which I thought was an amazing sounding keyboard at the time. And then on the, you know how the A-frame comes to an apex, I built a piece of wood that would hold, like at a perfect angle, my multi-moog. Okay, so that was my setup. I had the RD-1000, DX7, the Roland D50, and the multi-moog at an angle on the top. And I'm playing away, and thank God it was like the last song of the show. The thing just kept going like this, you know. Apparently, it started wiggling apart, and sure enough, the whole DX7 and RD-1000 thing just came crashing down to the stage. And here's the weird part: Jay Beckenstein is playing, and he's got in-ear monitors, and he doesn't even know what's going on. He doesn't even know that happened. Okay, and what happened was I just kept playing. I just found a sound on the D50 that I could take over and finish the song with. Between the multi-moog and the D50, I finished the song, and the people were going crazy. They could see what was going on, and yet we didn't stop. We finished the song, and Jay, of course, thought, you know, they're applauding his solo. So at the end of the song, we walk off the stage. We take a bow. We walk off the stage, and Jay's going, "Okay, well, you guys want to play for an encore? They're going crazy out there." I said, "Yeah. Do you see what's going on?" And he looked at it and he goes, "Oh my God, what happened?" You know. So I ended up going back doing an encore with just the D50 and the multi-mode dangling by a thread, hoping that they too didn't crash to the ground. And to tell you the truth, I was having nightmares that this would actually happen. Okay, and that stopped the nightmares. And it's almost like a premonition. It was like a premonition. It was like, the only problem is now I'm having nightmares that I walk out on stage completely naked.
Oh, there you go.
I hope that doesn't end up.
Well, now you know there's only one way to stop those nightmares, right?
Right.
That's right.
So yeah, I think I think the grand piano thing was a little harsher on me, but.
And if it is a premonition, Tom, I think you need to promote that gig heavily because, I know none of us are getting any younger, but you'll still probably sell even more tickets.
Well, I don't know if you guys got the news, but I have one more show with Spyro Gyra coming up in Pala, California. It's a casino. And a guy named Chris Fischer is going to take over for me because I'm going to be retiring with my wife. And we're going to be moving to Barcelona, Spain together.
Wow, that is, I hadn't picked up on that, Tom. And there's a couple of things, actually, we might come back to the retirement later, but we had Jason Miles on the show a few episodes back in this thing, and I've also seen someone else recently. There seems to be a lot of emigration to Portugal, Spain, and so on. What's the appeal, aside from the obvious, they're lovely countries?
What do you mean, what's the appeal? People are dying here every day from gunfire. Okay.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
And it's like 70 people died just this year alone so far from gunfire. One was a dog that blew his owner away by just mistakenly putting his paw on the trigger. Yikes. There's a really bad gun problem here. Everybody's got an arsenal, and it just feels like I feel safe in my home. I don't worry about people breaking into my house or anything like that. So I don't even own a gun. I never had a gun in my life. Okay, everybody loves me. I have no hatred towards anybody. I've always given people what I can. I've always been very generous with my time and with my, lending money or whatever it is I can do to help people. So my karma is intact. But unfortunately, there's a lot of people out there who are very angry about whatever it is and it's going on in their life. Or maybe it's the politics, which is very polarized now. People hate each other because they're not thinking like them, Same with the religious, thing. So we're exhausted by it, My wife and I we're done with it, Yeah. We want to go somewhere where even if there is a conflict, we don't even understand what's going on. We just want to live out the rest of our lives in peace and in tranquility and to be surrounded by beauty and warmth. And we found in Spain, especially in Barcelona, the people are very warm and very friendly, and there's no daily gun problems. And, I think there was a stabbing a few weeks ago or whatever. That's the worst thing that could possibly be in the news in Barcelona. And people get pickpocketed, in the tourist areas. Big deal, Here, children are getting killed, and it's like they don't do anything about it, They just keep, saying, oh, our thoughts and prayers, blah, blah, blah. In Melbourne, you guys had that mass shooting in the 80s. I think it was 1988 or something like that.
Yeah, that's right. There was one in Melbourne in the late 80s, yeah.
That was it. They just took there was no more guns allowed in that city square or whatever the city, you can go hunting, but you can't bring a gun into the city. And there hasn't been any problems.
Yes. So there was in the late 80s there was a crackdown in Victoria, and then in the I think it was 96, there was a mass shooting in Tasmania that led to much wider gun laws that essentially assisted there as well. So
but you did something about it. I mean, in Newfoundland and everywhere that I see where there is a problem and it's a very sophisticated society, it's a very simple thing. We don't do it here because it's just too much money to be made. And that's America, man. I coined a phrase, there's no cap on capitalism. It just keeps going
You should
up.
print T-shirts.
Up,
Just
up,
speaking of
up.
capitalism, you should print T-shirts, Tom. That'd be a good capitalist activity.
Well, yeah. But anyway, that's why.
So I mean that's obviously big for you personally as well as for the band. So I mean, I was going to ask you later in the show, just your perspective over the past, because my understanding is it's 50th anniversary next year. Yeah, the band.
Yeah, it won't be a part of that, but 49.
Yeah.
I mean, come
49 years. How are you feeling stepping out after 49 years? I mean, it's obviously a big thing.
Yeah, it was hard at first. I mean, I didn't know exactly how to approach Jay, and because he and I are the originators, him and myself, and Jeremy Wall, who was the original keyboard player, and I came along when they came to Buffalo to go to school, and Jay preferred the way I played the music, so he eventually just hired me. So I was just a kid. I mean, I didn't know what the hell. How to hold myself, how to behave. I didn't know anything about the business. I didn't know anything about touring. I didn't know anything about. All I knew was the music. So it took me a while to grow up, and because of this band's ability to immediately go out into the world. I mean, when Morning Dance hit, that was the end of my life as I knew it, because 250 days out of the year I was on the road. And the other times I was home, I was in the studio. So there was just like no downtime. Okay? It was just constantly writing music, constantly in the studio, recording the next record. We were doing like a record a year back then, in the early 80s. And it was just mind-boggling. I don't know how the hell we kept it together, but when we go out there and you could see the audience was just loving the energy and loving the music, the fresh, approach we were taking, and I enjoyed it because we tackled all kinds of different genres of music. We were playing reggae, we were playing funk, we were playing rock, we were doing some jazz. I mean, that's the thing that really attracted me to the gig. I mean, before that, I was just doing straight ahead jazz. So I learned a lot about all kinds of different music, and I got to meet all of my heroes. Not all of them, but I got to meet Oscar Peterson. I got to have breakfast with Count Basie. I hung with Dizzy Gillespie. Dizzy loved us. Dizzy was like, man, you guys are great. You're going to bring some new butts in them seats, And I got to meet all these amazing, legendary musicians because of this band. And we were on all the festivals, all the jazz festivals. We were the new guys on the block. Some people didn't think we were, serious, whatever. It's okay. But we had a following, and we still have a following. It's almost like a cult following. So that's what I'm going to miss, obviously. I'm going to miss the audience enjoying what we do. And, playing Morning Dance 100,000 times, it doesn't bother me because it's a great song. And Shaker Song, and we always have to play those, But
and you're getting a great audience reaction, right? Which makes it exciting for you every time. I'm sure it's fresh for you every time for that exact reason.
When we were in Africa, I think it was Joburg. Maybe it was Joburg. We started playing Catch in the Sun, and we started hearing this murmur come from the audience. They were all humming the melody with us.
Wow.
And that's the only time we've ever experienced that. So that was very spiritual kind of experience, on stage with them. So yeah, I have Spyro Gyra to thank for, all of the things that I know up to this point in my life. And the problem with this business, and the problem with being a musician that does this for a living and is constantly traveling, is you don't have a personal life. You really don't have much of a, it's hard to find somebody who has a really solid relationship with a loved one. And we're constantly going. I mean, obviously it's getting easier with FaceTime, but I really love my wife. And my wife helped me find myself and helped me to become as healthy as I can possibly be at this age. I just dropped 50 pounds over the COVID lockdown, and I feel like a kid again. I feel like I'm 20 years old again, you know. So I'm looking forward to the next chapter, staying in one place. I'm bringing all of my gear with me, and I'm going to be producing and writing and doing stuff over the internet with people. More interviews if I can. Maybe doing some teaching. So this is another chapter that I'm looking forward to. It's not going to be the same thing for me over and over again. I know exactly what to do. I know what airline I'm going to be on. I know how exactly to pack. I know what the gig is, and I know this is completely different. This is way out of my comfort zone, and it's only to make my wife happy, because she has done so much for me, and she has taken so much. I don't know, she's been so lonely in this relationship because I'm always gone, that I want to take whatever's left. I'm 65, I'll be 65 Tuesday. I want to just take whatever's left and give it to her, and really concentrate on her needs, and be the best husband I can be. And of course, a father to our daughters, and grandfather to the grandkids, who love me.
That's
well,
great. I mean, that's
congratulations to you for that, Tom. I mean, it's great, and I wish you really well for that next phase. And it's going to be a different phase, but still very, as you said, you should be writing, producing, so there'll be plenty going on, which is great. I'm really curious in that last sort of 49-year period. I'm certain you've evolved a lot as a musician over that time. And I'm certain Spyro Gyra has evolved a lot as a band over that time. It's impossible not to when you're playing so much. And I'd love to get your reflections on that. How do you think you've evolved yourself as a musician? But also, how have you seen Spyro Gyra evolving over that time as well?
Yeah, Spyro Gyra has been through so many changes. Mostly personnel. We've changed the drummers a lot, and we had the very first band that was playing the Bars of Buffalo had Freddie Rapello on guitar, and Eli Konikoff, and sometimes Ted Reinhardt, and there was a whole bunch of local guys. But when we started recording in the studio, we were recording with Will Lee and Steve Gadd and Steve Jordan and Hiram Bullock and Steve Love. Just the monsters of New York. And that really set the bar really high, and I was really blessed to be able to be in those basic sessions, and they kept my parts. You know what I mean? They didn't come in and bring in Herbie to play. They kept my parts, so obviously I was doing a good job. So I really kind of took that and ran with it, and tried to stay off other people's toes, try not to overplay. That's one of the main things I really learned, was to play for the music, not for myself, and to play for the other players when they're soloing or when they're being featured. You have to be there for them. You have to support them, and don't overplay behind them and stuff like that. I hear a lot of some keyboardists. I don't know what the problem is, but they have this thing where they got to keep playing, like as much as possible. I've heard that, and it's like, dude, just chill, listen, and then respond, and give them something that they can ride on, and give them something that they can maybe alter their trajectory musically, And the band at this point has, there's always great musicians involved. But I think how we've evolved to this point is we've become more of a family, and we've become more really close friends. Like the kind of friends where you can really trust when you go on stage. There's no worries, It's like you can go on with that attitude, like, this is going to be great. Even if everything's falling apart, we just smile and just pick it up from there. And I'm really proud of how we've, come through the incompetence of some people that are working in the monitors, and you know, luckily we always have a front of house guy, you know, that works with us, who's great. So we can rest assured that whatever we're playing is going to be out there and people are going to hear it, and it's going to be well mixed. But what's going on stage can sometimes be horrible. I mean, the monitors are screeching, and you don't hear what you were supposed to hear at the sound check. The sound check is like, why do we have a sound check? It doesn't sound like that now, you know. So we've been dealing with that a lot lately, and it's like when I hear the front of house guy say, you know, I'm going to do monitors from front of house, I'm like, yes, thank God, because then I know at least I'm going to hear everybody, you know. They don't realize some of these young people that work in the tech industry on stage, especially during the festivals, and there's like quick turnovers and there's no sound check. You're just supposed to plug everything in. We call it a throw and go. Oh God, I hate those. I hate those with a passion, man, because you just never know what you're going to end up having to deal with on stage. I mean, I've had to like sometimes play by sight. It's kind of like the old, you know, Ringo Starr story where he couldn't hear Paul or John or anybody else, so he would just watch their lips move, and that's how he knew where he was in the song. I mean, it's that kind of thing, and it shouldn't be like that. I mean, anybody who goes into this professional, you know, world should have it together, you know. But it's the yes thing, you know. It's like, yeah, do you know how to do this? Yeah, sure, I know how to do it. And then they get, you know, they get thrown into the sea of sharks, you know. So that's the only other thing that I'm not going to miss, is having to go and not know what kind of incompetence I have to deal with. But the band,
that's a great,
band is like I said, we can go out there and no matter what happens, we're going to have fun because we love each other.
That's right, and I think that's a brilliant point, Tom. It's about, it's essentially like working out a relationship with a family or brothers. If you work that out well, it works well.
Absolutely. And there was some hard times with, you know, we were bickering with each other. We were yelling at each other for a while. Not recently, but, you know, back in the formative days, you know, especially with the, you know, the mind-altering substances, which I have not had anything for 25 years now. That was like, why are musicians constantly, you know, set on screwing this up? There's nothing wrong. I mean, it's perfect the way it is. Don't change it, you know. But back in the day, it was style. You know, it was like it was a thing you had to do, or you weren't cool. You know. So, and plus, the record companies would actually encourage it if you can dig that. I mean, how many jobs do you go to where your boss says, "Here, do a line of blow," you know?
That's right.
That's the only business where that happens, and you get picked up in a limo, and there's champagne there, and the guy, the liaison, is giving you the vial with the blow. I mean, why are you doing this to these people? Maybe it's because you want us to be zombies, and we don't think about the contract we're signing.
You won't notice that money that's gone missing all of a sudden.
I'm not going to get started on that. On that.
That's another whole show.
Let's stick with music and keyboards.
Yeah, that's right. No, that's great. And I mean, Tom, you mentioned before just those first years you were doing an album a year, but even in the last 20 years, you've essentially released 10 albums as Spyro Gyra. So what are the standout moments for you even over those last 10 albums, and how have you still maintained such a disciplined output?
I think it really stems from Jay Beckenstein's insistence on trying something new. I'm very proud of the fact that he's not one of those guys that goes in the studio and says, okay, we're going to have to do another morning dance. You know, I think Catching the Sun was about as good as that was. You know, the record company said, okay, Morning Dance is a hit, you got to write another Morning Dance. So he wrote Catching the Sun as his sequel to Morning Dance. And as you know, if you know the song, it goes off into a funky groove, and, you know, Randy Brecker does a trumpet solo, and, you know, it's totally different. But it starts out like it, you know. So I've always been very proud of Jay's ability to always say, hey guys, you know, let's take a whole nother direction here. But we went in the studio without any preparation whatsoever, and it was the Rhinebeck Sessions. That's the name of that record, the Rhinebeck Sessions, and it was in Rhinebeck, New York, at a great analog studio called the Clubhouse. So, amazing studio, with the Neve boards and $500,000 worth of really good vintage mics and, everything you could possibly need. Vintage keyboards everywhere, I was in heaven. I was in heaven at that place. And they had a nice Steinway and Hammond B3 and clavinet and the Fender Rhodes. Everything was there, But anyway, we went in there and we didn't, with really no idea what was going to come out. But like I said before, we were so confident in each other's abilities and we trusted each other so much that we just started playing. And the very first thing that we actually did was like a sound check, right? And I think it ended up being called Who Knew? It's one of the cuts off of that record. It was called Who Knew? And it's just, it kind of starts out with us kind of noodling, and then Lee Pearson, who was on drums at the time, just starts this groove, and then Scott starts playing his rapid bass line, and we just started going, And it's like, we got to keep that. That's good, So yeah, that's the good thing about Jay Beckenstein's trajectory musically. He would always do something special and new, and the artwork that he would pick is always the best. It's just well run. I mean, Hiram Bullock called us the well-oiled road machine, but it was more of a well-run creative environment for everybody to basically stick together and try to create some kind of a sculpture, a musical sculpture, by adding the parts in just the right places, It wasn't ever one guy, It's just all of us cohesively coming up with these ideas together. And it was always like that. Even if somebody wrote a song, they'd bring the song in, we'd play it, and then everybody would have, hey, let's try this over here. Let's change the key over here. And instead of going, hell, that's my song. Don't mess with my song. It would be like, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Let's do it, Jay would always play the melodies that I'd write his way. And what I wouldn't object. It sounded great the way he played it. It's better than I wrote it, So you got to open your heart to the way everybody is going to perceive or interpret your music. And that was always an open thing with this band, Everybody was, again, it goes back to that love and respect and trust. So yeah, it's been a great run. I mean,
it sounds like a really genuinely collaborative approach, Tom. You're really working together on something.
And and I gotta thank Jay Beckenstein because the live thing is different because we try to do what the people want. It's not like oh, we're gonna hit you with all the the abstract crap that we were in the studio doing. I mean, we got over 350 songs after all the records we played. We could have a different set every single time we go into a city, but would that be what they want to hear? So what we do live is basically dictated by the response of the audience. It's like the Marx Brothers routine. The jokes that got a laugh stay in. The jokes that didn't get a laugh, they're out of there.
Yeah. I think that's a great perspective. And aside from the massive, as you said, 350 songs, in 2019 you released Vinyl Tap, which was a covers album, which I love to bits as well. And we'll be
that was another direction.
Another direction. And so, I mean, we had one of our listeners actually, one of our supporters, want to ask you a question on that related to that. So has there been a jazz cover song that either you've done with Spyro Gyra or otherwise that has really amazed you, something that really stood out for you as a wonderful cover you've loved to do? And then on the other side of it, has there been a jazz tune you've seen out in sort of the rock or pop arena that you've loved?
Oh, wow. Well, you're going to get me on that one. Because
that one should have been with notice, probably.
Moment's Notice, yeah. that was pretty awesome. The way, and a lot of that was Scott Ambush's idea to do it in 9. It's in 9/8. And it took a while for everybody to feel that, but man, once it felt good, if Oliver Nelson were here, I just would hope he would like the way we played that. So yeah, we really enjoyed taking that jazz song and flipping it. And one of my favorite songs off that record, which oddly enough I had a lot of influence on, was What a Fool Believes. It was that Michael McDonald song from the Doobie Brothers, and I've always loved that song, especially Michael McDonald's versions. And man, again, Scott Ambush came up and said, "No, let's not do it like that. Let's do it like an African. Let's try an African beat, And Lionel Cordew, who was the drummer, he's the latest drummer. He's played with everybody, He's played with Jeff Lorber and Mike Stern a lot. And anyway, he just came up with this perfect feeling African groove, and we just took it from there. And again, that's taking a pop song or a pop rock song, whatever you want to call it, and flipping it into something more jazz. And then we took Moment's Notice, which is a standard jazz song. We flipped it into something a little more funky, So that was a pleasure to play that record. First of all, we were a little hesitant because we didn't want to sound like a casino, band on stage, playing covers, So we went in with the intention of making it ours and completely changing it, flipping it. But it goes back to what I was saying before, listening to everybody's ideas and taking the ones that really are changing the song properly and making it sound good, making it better, and stepping aside and not getting in front of yourself and not get your ego out of it, So that's been the process that I think really works universally with music, and especially jazz.
Can I say to our listeners and our viewers, if you've not heard Spyro Gyra before, that vinyl tap album is a great way to introduce yourself to what a bunch of excellent jazz musicians can do with songs that you maybe have already heard and are quite familiar with, and it will give you a really nice intro into the band. And then I think it will be awesome to then explore their original music. And so that brings me to my next question, Tom, which is, what are some of the Spyro Gyra tracks that would be great things to introduce new listeners to get them really into the vibe and the feel of the band? Maybe some favourites of yours over the years.
Wow, there's so many of them. And the thing is that if a listener who's never heard of Spyro Gyra is into reggae, for instance, there's one off of the... Geez, I should have all this information in front of me because I forget the names of the records and everything. Patterns in the Rain. Go to Spyro Gyra on YouTube. Go to Spyro Gyra, Patterns in the Rain. And we had a vocalist named Alex Lidgertwood, who used to be with Carlos Santana for a long time. An amazing Scottish vocalist. It was supposed to be a ballad, I think. Yeah, it was supposed to be a ballad. It was really kind of beautiful ballad. But we started kind of jokingly making it a reggae tune, And Jay said, "Oh, let's run with that. That's the way this is going to go." and Alex, who's Scottish, immediately put on his Bob Marley impression while he was singing, and it was just awesome, the way it came out. So people who have, an affinity towards the reggae style will have that to listen to. People who like funk music go to I guess it's Good to Go. There's a song called Funkyard Dog by Julio Fernandez. That's just blazing funk. I love the way Julio writes. he's got a real spectrum of different kinds of styles that he can write in. One of them is obviously Latin music, and also funk music and rock. So he can come up with some really great stuff. And this one Funkyard Dog thing, man, it was infectious. And we played it live pretty much just like the record, and it was always a crowd pleaser. And then there's the jazz guys that it's like, well, can Spyro swing? Jay, I wrote a song called Conversations way back in the 80s on the City Kids record. And it had Steve Gadd on drums and Eddie Gomez on bass. And oh my God, it really made my song come alive. And then later on, Jay wrote a song called Burke's Law. Yeah, it was actually a tribute to Dizzy Gillespie. A lot of swing in that. Then he and I wrote a song together called The Tippin' Point. That's Tippin', Tippin' Point. It was another swinger. So there's lots of instances of great swing in our music. There's also some rock in our music. I mean, everybody knows Bob Goes to the Store, which was written by Kim Stone. And that was like right out of a, Frank Zappa book, It had a theme to it. It had, they made a video of it. There's some great stuff that both in rock, funk, Latin music, and jazz that you can always pick from. And
right.
I can always say, yeah, go and listen to Incognito, which is one of the songs that I wrote that I really love the way it came out. Obviously, because it's Marcus Miller on bass and Steve Gadd on drums. But it's not about the guys who played it. It's it's the direction that I was into at the time, and I listened a lot to Weather Report. They blew my mind, as they did with everybody at the time. So I wanted to try and fit into that kind of genre a little bit. It made me feel good about myself to know that I could actually play some of that stuff. I got to meet Joe Zawinul and Wayne Shorter, and they were the gods. Same with Chick Corea and Al Di Meola and Mahavishnu. John McLaughlin and Miles. I got to meet Miles. I couldn't believe it. I could hardly speak. I swear to God, I went up to him, and he actually was very nice. I thought he was going to spit at me or something like that and get away from me, kid. But yeah, he was very supportive, and again, it's all about the love that you feel for the musicians and for the people, especially that you consider your mentors musically. Even though they're not sitting with you, you can hear everything in their music. Their music is the teacher, and that's the way I've always felt it. I'm going off on tangents. I know.
No, that's good. But no, you've actually created a beautiful segue, Tom, because you mentioned about mentors and people that inspire you. Well, you've obviously, aside from Spyro Gyra, created a number of your own albums. What has been the sort of inspirations, and what's floated your boat musically for your solo work?
Well, first of all, my wife has everything to do with that. The first record was produced by Jay Beckenstein, and that was Extremities. And that was basically his way of going, hey, let me help you out, get your solo career started. And, we had Willie on it, and Eddie Gomez, and Dave Weckl was on drums on most of that record. Jay played on it. I had, John Faddis, and it was just a great experience, obviously, knowing that anything that I do, I'm going to have people just listen to me and listen to my music and we did a cover of Loving You, the Minnie Riperton song. That I thought would be like the radio thing, But after that record, it took a while, but I got married in 1996 to Yvonne, my wife, and she came up with this idea. She heard this music that I had been just fiddling with in my studio, and she said, "You know what? We should release this stuff, but we should we should not have to go through the whole process of, shopping record labels. Let's just create a record label. And I'm like, you can do that? She was an attorney for a long time. So, the whole legal schmiegel stuff, right up her alley, no problem. She started the company of Jazz Bridge Music, and it became the label that I released my stuff on. And, we learned the hard way that it's not just having a label, but you got to have lots of money, It's like the old saying, how do I make a huge fortune? Well, you start with a small fortune. Anyway, that was the hard part. Getting the right people to promote it, and the radios to play it, and all that stuff. So you had to pay people almost weekly in order to promote stuff. But yeah, it was all because of my wife that I got inspired to just keep coming up with material of my own. A lot of the material was material that was kind of kicked to the curb by Spyro. And I was like, great, I got all this material that I can, try and finish. And again, I wasn't, and I never have been very rich. I have never been wealthy. It's always been a struggle financially. But I'm extremely happy. I don't need money to be happy, So I did everything I could to make everything happen musically by playing everything myself. Okay, so I'd program drums, I'd do the bass work on the keyboards, and I'd try to make it sound like somebody else actually came in and laid the tracks down. And the response was so amazing. It was like, who's on bass? Man, that guy's killing, man. I had to come up with a name for the people. The bass player was Schu Thomas, okay? and I called my drummer Slide Funkshin. Slide Funkshin, Funkshsin. So that was just a joke, but I was riding in my car one time, coming through an FM radio station was playing one of my songs off of my solo record. I forget which one it was. I think it was Reflections Over Time. And the girl comes on and says, and that was Tom Schuman off of Reflections Over Time, with Tom playing on keyboards and Slide Funkshin on drums and Schu Thomas on bass. And I just like blasted out laughing. I was like, I had to pull the car over. It was like,
yeah, that is brilliant. That is brilliant.
So yeah, it was a great outlet. And again, I have to thank my brilliant wife for giving me that portal. It's a portal that I was able to take whatever it is that was laying around that Spyro didn't use and finish it. And I still have hard drives full of stuff. I've got at least 2 or 3 CDs. What are they called now? Just records? What do you call it now? Everybody just streams single songs now.
Yeah, see, I still love the terms albums and such.
Albums, yeah.
Tom, yeah, I'm a big fan of that still.
But I think what I'm going to be doing from now on is just singles. When I finish something, I'm going to release it. And I'm not expecting any money. That's the thing. That's the beauty of it. I don't care anymore. You're not going to get paid. And what you do get paid is going to be so small, it's going to be a joke, So you do it for therapy. You do it because it makes you feel, vital in the music industry, and it gives people pleasure. So whatever you can do to help somebody get through their day, they may be having a really bad day, and they put on a song that you wrote, and they go, yes, life's not so bad, And then that's, to me, that's the payback.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So that's what I'm going to continue doing, and I thank my wife for giving me that freedom and letting me stay in the studio for hours on end, even though I just came back from the road. She hasn't seen me in a week. And then I go into the studio to finish the song. It's like, see you, honey. I'll be in the studio for the next 10 hours, not sleeping. Once you're on a roll, you got to stick with it, So
that's right.
That's like I said, therapy.
And Tom, I'm really interested to know, because you never stop creating, what are your go-to, let's talk keyboards now for a while, what are your go-to keyboards that are really central to the way you create now?
Oh man, the thing is, I want so many. I wanted, like for instance, I want one of the Nords. Like the real weighted action key Nord, but I don't have $5,000.
That's the
4 or 5 grand. I just don't have it. I mean, I have other things that I have to pay for before I think about that. So I'm keeping my old Yamaha MO8, right? Weighted key action. It works fine, and it plays all of the sampled Grands and Rhodes sounds and everything beautifully. It does a great job, and I bought it, believe it or not, for like $400 here in Las Vegas. It was broken, so I bought it broken. I went on eBay and I found a motherboard for that keyboard, and I bought it for $50. Popped out the motherboard, put the new one in. Works fine. That's one thing I learned being a keyboard player way back when I had a Fender Rhodes. You got to learn how to fix your own stuff. And the Fender Rhodes, the tines would break and it'd be out of tune, so you'd have to go in there and change that little spring so that it's like in tune, you get your octaves right. I was constantly fixing those things. So I'm mechanically minded. I built my own studio by myself. All the electronics, all of the gear, everything I did myself. But I did that, and I love this Korg X50. Okay, it's a toy, It's plastic. It's just a toy, but man, the sounds on this thing are fantastic. It's like the old Triton sounds and the Corona sounds and the it's Korg, and they're brilliant with the sonics. So even though it's it's a wafer, it's just a little thing. I got two of them. I have one that I actually play and another one I have for parts. Those are the two keyboards I use. The other thing that I have is a PC. It's a HP Z400, which I upgraded to the max RAM, and I got all of the solid state drives in it, and I upgraded the hell out of it, and I put Contact and Omnisphere and Ableton, and the list goes on and on. I mean, this thing is jam packed with sounds, and I got to thank my friend Sandeep Chowta in India, who helped me configure it and make it work. I don't know if you're familiar with his work, but
No.
yeah, he's in India. He's like a Bollywood producer, and he's a big fan of my music, and we connected online, and he says, man, whatever you need, man, let me know. I'll see if I can get it for you, and he really helped me out. He helped me out. I have more sounds now than I could possibly. Yeah, I can't repeat myself. It's all there, and it's all I have to do is turn the thing on and just start going through sounds. On Omnisphere alone,
Yeah, exactly.
it's killing. I mean, all you need is a good controller, and so I have that computer that has. Oh my God, forget it. The rest of my life, I'll be producing stuff just from the sounds coming out of that computer, and it's got Windows 10 in it. Not Windows 10. Is it Windows? No, Windows 7. It's got Windows 7 in it, okay? I don't need any upgrades from that. It works fine. It's beautiful. I just keep it off the internet,
Yeah,
And
it's a
if
great
I need
operating
it,
system,
I
Windows 7.
put it on the internet to download something, and that's it, But I have that, and then I have my laptop, which has Main Stage on it, and a whole nother slew of sounds. And I've got my Ivory. I've got the Keyscapes pianos, and I swear to God,
It's sort of well set up, yeah.
I had a Yamaha C7 in my house, which I recorded on, and I swear to God, the Keyscape Yamaha C7 sounds better to me. So, I wanted a Steinway, like a 9-foot Steinway D, but I don't have $160,000 to that's a house, So, yeah, I mean, I use what I've got, so I will not need what I've not.
Yeah, and as you say, the technology is such these days that that so many sounds are at our fingertips as keyboard players now. It's an amazing time to be alive, I think, with the creative possibilities of what the technology allows us. Yeah.
And I found out that, you're only as good as your interface,
Yeah.
You got to have something with a really pristine clock and really good wires, make sure everything's hooked up just right. And, it's best to have everything connected to the same clock and all that stuff. So I recently bought an Antelope Orion 32, which has just upped my game, by 50% at least. I hear that stuff back and I go, wow, I should do this for a living. The whole studio thing, It's not all about just playing keyboards. It's about sonic perfection, because people are just getting used to hearing everything slammed, and the mastering now is just all in your face, and dynamics are a thing of the past. It's like when I listen to Justin Bieber or Beyonce, I try to put on my music next to it, and it's like it sounds like half volume. It's like the mastering is just gone through the roof. How do they make it that loud? And you can still hear the musicality. It's a science. It's another science.
Yeah, it's funny. We were talking a little bit about that with Steve Nathan around how music's changed over time, and that dynamic range isn't necessarily so important to modern audiences, and variety isn't necessarily so important. So it's a different mindset. And as you know, Tom, Steve tagged you in as a keyboard player that we might love to talk to. And we've had a great time chatting to you, but now it's our turn to ask you: who would you tag as a keyboard player that you would love to see potentially interviewed on this show?
You know what? I got to tell you, the guy who's going to take my place, his name is Chris Fischer, Fischer, and you got to check him out, man. This is what makes me feel really at ease through this whole transition, is knowing that Chris is going to take over, and he's going to send that band to a whole new level.
Great.
With his
noted.
Yeah,
so
and you really should. He's a really nice guy, and he's an incredibly hilarious, funny guy. So you're just going to have a whole ball of fun talking with him and having him tell you the way he does things. And he and I have been talking a lot, and I told him, because he's really concerned about, geez, you're my idol, and I don't want to go in there and like. I said, dude, do you, man? Don't even worry about, trying to sound like me. He wanted me to, give him all my sounds, and he's trying to collect all the stuff that I have in order to. No, man, you play it your way, you do. And he's like, oh, okay, I think I get it now, But that's what I told him was, I'm not going to go see Spyro Gyra if you're going to sound like me. I don't want to hear me. I want to hear you.
That's right.
I think what I did was I set him free, to be himself, and I think Jay is going to really enjoy that. The rest of the guys in the band, of course, he's worked with Scott Ambush for forever. They're like brothers. So that's the other reason why I picked Chris. But yeah, when I met him, I was like, this guy. I asked him, if anything happens and I'm in the hospital or something, can you sub for me? And he says, oh man, it would be an honor. So he went ahead and learned the whole set. Just in case, so it's always good to have a sub. So then when my wife decided to move to Spain, obviously they're not going to fly me to all the U.S. states, and so it became obvious that I had to, leave. I called Chris. I was like, dude, do you want the gig? He said, he's almost, I think he dropped the phone, so, and he said, sure, what do you want me to do? And I said, just chill, it'll happen, and it did. And I'm real sad in one side of my brain, but the other side, I'm very happy for the future, and I'm excited for my future.
Yeah,
but
great.
Check Chris Fischer out.
Will do. No, great suggestion, and we definitely will. And just as an example of coincidences in music, Tom, you mentioned Count Basie before. The guest that will be appearing on the episode before this one actually cited Count Basie as the person, if he were still alive, obviously, that he would have loved to have seen interviewed.
Right. Well, any of those guys were just a lot of fun. I got to tell my Count Basie story.
Go for it.
it's, I don't know how much time, we're over an hour
Please.
now.
No,
That's
please.
okay. That's
Please.
good.
Yeah.
This was 1979. It's the first time we played at the North Sea Jazz Festival in Den Haag, Holland. Okay, and I don't have the roster in front of me, but it was just a hodgepodge of legendary guys. I mean, and gals. Woody Herman was there. Count Basie Orchestra with Count Basie, Dizzy. Freddie Hubbard. I mean, you name them, they were there. So, we're kids at that point. I mean, we're like going, wow, do we belong here? I mean, this is crazy, So when we checked into the hotel, which is the hotel everybody stayed at, next to where the stages were, they told us we had free breakfast. And I was like, wow, we're not used to that, Since, you got to go and buy breakfast the next morning in the States. Of course, they caught on now. But, yeah, there was breakfast is included. So obviously the next morning, everybody made sure they got up early enough, to get that breakfast. And it was killing breakfast. I mean, it was a huge buffet. So I get in line to get with my tray, and, I start getting the eggs in and all that stuff. And I'm looking around, I'm going, jeez, look at all the people in here. Look at all these incredible, legendary jazz musicians. I'm like freaking out, And I also noticed there's nowhere to sit. There's absolutely nowhere I'm going to sit down and enjoy my breakfast. So I'm thinking, okay, well, I'm just going to get a gander of everybody and, take my breakfast up to my room. I'm on my way out when I hear this voice. Hey, there's a spot over here. Get over here, kid. It's Count Basie. In the corner of the ballroom where they're having the breakfast. And I'm like, I'm looking behind me. I'm going, yeah, you, get over here. He summoned me to sit in the only seat that was left, right in front of, across the table from him. And it was Jim Hall on his left and Ray Brown, my father's favorite bass player, on his right. And I'm sitting there with this breakfast, and I'm like, I can hardly even think about eating, Yeah. They started telling stories and anecdotes, and it was just I was laughing, I was having a good time. I was just being accepted just like a family, And it was like a family reunion every time we'd hang out with these guys, And man, I learned my lesson about, how when white people think that, black people are going to be rebellious or anything like that. It's ridiculous. If you give them love, if you give anybody love, you're going to get love in return. And that's what I learned from these jazz legends. They went through hell with people, They went through hell with all of that, civil rights crap, But did they have a whole bunch of angst and they hate everybody because of it? No, they had a great time because they went out there on stage and they were appreciated. And that was their whole being was what they played on stage. So I learned so much from those guys, just by the way they were, just by the way they lived, And the white guys too, Woody Herman was a monster, I can't think of it, everybody right now, but that was what I got from those legendary players was this kind of family reunion vibe, where everybody got together and they just loved each other, hugs, and Dizzy remembered my name. I mean, I showed up at the Hollywood Bowl in one of the jazz festivals, the Playboy Jazz Festivals, and Dizzy shows up and sees me. He goes, "Hey, Tom, how's it going, man? I haven't seen you since, And I'm like, Dizzy Gillespie remembered my name, So I got to hand it to these guys, man. They got us all started. They blazed the trail, and they had to go through hell in order to make it happen for them, But I was blown away, and I think I stayed until those guys left, and then I ate my cold breakfast finally, But geez, and I can tell a whole bunch of stories about a whole bunch of guys like that,
It's worth a cold breakfast to say the least.
Oh, absolutely, And then I think I don't know if it was that time or a time later on. We had to play after Weather Report. Okay, so we were scheduled after Weather Report on the same stage, and I made the mistake of going to see Weather Report. And, you feel this small after, a performance by these guys. But luckily, they turned the audience. The Weather Report audience went away and the Spyro audience came in. And we felt great. It was like we went on stage and they were cheering for us, and it didn't matter, who was on before us. Thank God for that, because if it was the Weather Report crowd, they would have been filing out in droves during our set.
Yes, thank God for fluid audiences at big events. No, that was great, Tom. Thank you. Brilliant story. And we've got the dreaded Desert Island Disc question. Tom, 5 albums that if you had to choose them, what would they be?
Oh, my gosh. I anticipated this, but I never thought about it. Obviously, Heavy Weather. Weather Report's Heavy Weather. That it's a must. I got to hear that every week. Miles Davis, My Funny Valentine. Oscar Peterson, the trio. I think it was the one where he did a version of Green Dolphin Street. I think I grew up listening to that record with my dad. So it was called The Trio. Also, let me think, because it's all going back to those days when I first started listening to music. Chick Corea, Light as a Feather. I'm trying to think of a different artist, but I listen to Miles all the time. I listen to Bill Evans, Live at the Vanguard. There you go.
Great.
And I didn't even get into all the Chick Corea stuff and all the Keith Jarrett stuff and all the, Herbie Hancock stuff. Come on, the Headhunters record changed my life. All the Weather Report stuff. You want 5?
Yeah, it's not fair.
I know.
It's not fair. It's not fair.
And just as an aside, Tom, if over 70 episodes, I think the number one most cited life-changing record at this stage is Headhunters.
Right. Yeah. When I first heard that boop, beep, boop, beep, boop, beep, boop, I was like, what the hell is this? Then it turned out to be Watermelon Man. Talk about flipping your own music and turning it into something completely new. That just blew me away, man. I was like, good for you, Herbie, man. And he's like 75 now, or is he like close to 80? And he looks great. He looks fantastic.
He does look great, absolutely.
That just shows you that music can really, it gives you a sense of immortality, I think.
It does. And I think that's a great note on which to end, Tom. We can't thank enough for taking the time, particularly it sounds like in what's a pivotal time of your life, moving to Spain. And I just keep thinking of your poor grandchildren who are going to have to suffer through holidays in Spain.
They're gonna fly out there and visit us.
Yeah, absolutely they are. That's brilliant. So no, I can't thank you enough. Thank you for everything you've done in music. We really appreciate the time you've taken today, and it sounds like things are really still got a long way to go. I think, it's going to be a whole new world
20 years.
in Spain.
I'm thinking 20 years.
Easy 20.
Then I'm going to be a vegetable for a while.
There we have it. That was the interview with Tom. Paul, as you said in the intro, absolute pleasure talking with Tom, and he was a font of knowledge.
Yeah, he really was. And I always have to pinch myself, David. I don't know about you, but we're kind of in the presence of greatness talking to these people. And it was, a lot of fun, and I always learn a lot from our guests, and Tom was certainly no exception.
No, agreed. Absolute pleasure. And as you heard, Tom is about to make a big move, so we wish him huge luck with the move to Spain. I think it'll be amazing, and look forward to hearing about his next adventures.
Yeah, no doubt.
So,
hey, before you go on, David, I've got just an observation or a thought. We talk a lot about gear and these sort of things, and it just shows you that a good player will make their gear talk. And a Yamaha MO8 and 2 Korg X50s, and look at what he does with it. So it just shows you that with the right musician can make any instrument talk. That's just what I reckon anyway.
That's great. No, I couldn't agree more. And then the inverse is crap musicians like me need really good gear so that we can at least do a decent job. But you're right. Someone like Tom, you You don't need that. And look, I'm a big fan. I've never had an X50, but I owned a Triton LE. I owned an M50, sort of all those next tier down from the flagships, and they're brilliant keyboards.
Yeah, actually, there's a couple of local guys where I live who play X50s, and it's actually a really cool bit of gear, the X50.
Yeah. No, so great point. So yeah, we'll be back again in a couple of weeks. But as always, want to give a huge shout out to our gold and silver supporters. Brother Paul Brown from the Water Boys. I know he's been busy, and not just from the Water Boys. He's been playing with Mike Ferris and practicing with Mike Ferris recently. Thank you, Brother Paul. Tammy Catcher of Tammy's Musical Stew. Again, always worth a check out. Some wonderful curated content, highly recommended. The team, Dave Bryson, the team at the musicplayer.com forums, they've got some great actual interactive gear chats on at the moment. One of Casio's new releases, the one with the amazing, and I apologise, I've forgotten the model number, the Casio one with the amazing vocal stuff built in, where you can essentially play lyrics, program lyrics in and play them from the keyboard. I tell you what, I'm very tempted on that one. And there's also a great discussion on the Osmos, the Expressive E Osmos, which, Paul, I don't think I've told you I've put a deposit down on one.
No, you haven't told me, but knowing you, like, I'm just not shocked. So listeners, viewers, David loves gear, and if there's a new shiny toy out there, David is going to get it, I guarantee you.
Absolutely.
So good on you, because you do it so I don't have to. So then I can listen to your reviews. That's good.
And it is, and I'm not just being modest, it is truly wasted on me. The people that will get the most out of something like the Osmos, which for those unaware is this amazing keyboard that allows you to, through velocity, aftertouch, and able to, wobble's a really bad word, but you can shift the keys horizontally as well as vertically, so you can sort of nearly play it like a guitar. Is just getting rave reviews. If you haven't checked out the Osmos, do have a look at some YouTube videos. I know a lot of our listeners will be aware of it. So yeah, I've put a deposit down. Apparently I'll be taking delivery in April. There's a bit of demand for them. So anyway, musicplay.com forums, and last but not least, the Radio Grande, Grande, Grande YouTube channel, which is devoted to bring you funk and soul reimaginings of iconic songs. Can't recommend them highly enough. Great listen. I have their playlist on quite often. So thank you to all for your support. So as I said, we'll be back again in a fortnight or so. Usual website address. We're on Facebook at the Keyboard Chronicles. The Keyboard CHR1 on Twitter. We're still hanging in there on Twitter. We're on Instagram as the Keyboard Chronicles, where we're quite active. And then good old-fashioned email, editor@keyboardchronicles.com. Finally, patreon.com/Keyboard Chronicles. For $2 or $3 a month, you can really help keep this boat afloat. Paul, great to have you back.
David, it's been a pleasure to be back. Thank you again for inviting me into your studio.
No, very pleasure's all mine, and we'll be back, as I said, in a couple of weeks with another really interesting guest. And in the meantime, thank you for listening, and we'll see you back here then.
Da da da